Niska moves that the rules of the House be so far suspended so that House Bill number 3127 be recalled from the Committee on Taxes, be given its second and third readings, and be placed upon its final passage.
I recognize the member from Anoka, the maker of the motion, Representative Niska.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. That is my motion, and I request a roll call.
A roll call has been requested. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. Representative Niska.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I believe Representative Anderson will speak first to the bill.
Recognize the member from Washington, Representative Anderson, PE.
Thank you, members. This bill, unlike the last couple, is not something where we have partisan disagreements on. This truly is a nonpartisan, good tax committee issue. For those of you that aren't on taxes, I'll explain it briefly. The pass-through entity tax says that there are 66,000 businesses, small and medium-sized businesses in the state of Minnesota. And when the feds passed tax reform back in 2021 under President Trump, when they passed tax reform, they essentially lowered the dollar amount of the SALT tax. That's a state and local tax deduction that businesses and individuals can deduct off their federal taxes. The high tax states like the state of Minnesota responded by saying, hey folks, you can pay your Minnesota taxes at the top rate and you can pay them directly through your business. And it was essentially a way to get around the SALT tax penalty that the feds, under President Trump, put on high tax, generally blue states. Minnesota did that. It was bipartisan. Oh, I think it was almost unanimous. And unfortunately, that expired at the end of this tax year, 2025. We should have renewed that. Almost every other state that's a high tax state renewed that provision, and we didn't do it here in Minnesota. There's a bill that we've heard in taxes twice now that actually renews that. And let me point out, there is not one dime that Minnesota loses by passing this accounting measure, not one dime. But the businesses in Minnesota, by not having this pass-through entity tax ability, will lose about almost $500 million. So we will be sending, businesses and individuals will be sending $500 million extra to the federal government if we don't do this. And that $500 million is money that could go and stay in business. It could expand local businesses here. It could be sent to charities. It could be spent in the state of Minnesota. Instead, by not passing this in a timely fashion, which we haven't, we're neglectful. By not doing it in a timely fashion, we are going to punish businesses and individuals in Minnesota. Let me point out, there are 66,000 small and medium-sized business owners that use the pass-through entity tax. 66,000. Now, folks, for those of you that own a business, should know the business tax season, they were due yesterday. March 15th is the date for business taxes. That was yesterday. So all of these small and medium-sized businesses are absolutely scrambling, trying to figure out what to do. How do they pay their Minnesota tax estimates for 2026 when they don't know if it's going to be paid through the entity, through the actual business, or whether it's going to be paid personally? And they're scrambling. And you're probably getting calls from your chamber, you're getting calls from your local business people going, what is going on up at the Capitol? What's happening? And again, this is not a partisan issue. This does not cost the state a dime, not one dime, but by not doing this now, we are costing our business owners and our citizens a huge amount of money. Now, even if this passes down the road in May, you're months and months behind. And what you've done is create an environment in this state where there's no certainty. You're telling small and medium business owners that you don't care, that you would rather play games and maybe attempt to negotiate this for something else. But this is not a partisan issue, folks. It's not. We sat in, twice we've had this in tax committee. Last week, or maybe it was the time before, we've had, Democrat business people in our tax committee saying it's crazy that we're not doing this now. These are well-known folks, and they're saying it's crazy. There is no reason to not do this, and to have not done it before yesterday, frankly. So this is an urgency. It's an urgent thing to save about $500 million for Minnesota. Again, not costing one dime to our state coffers. I know it's supported by the Department of Revenue. This passed the Senate 9-0, and it's sitting on their general register. But as you know, tax bills have to come from the House. So this is nonpartisan completely. It's an absolute no-brainer, and it needs to get done now. Thank you.
I recognize a member from Hennepin, Representative Gomez.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Under the Minnesota Constitution, tax bills must originate in the House, as Representative Anderson just said. That means that for decades, tax chairs in the House and House speakers have fiercely defended this prerogative of the House. My first year as tax chair, 2023, a wise once and future tax chair at that time, the minority lead of the tax committee in the House, addressed this issue. The reason that I've always opposed standalone tax bills, you need an ironclad agreement with the other body. If you send it separately, it's death by 1,000 cuts. The other side will have 1 million amendments. I was a stickler about having no other tax bills except an omnibus bill and occasionally a conformity bill. You got to be careful in tax committee with putting bills on the floor. That was Representative Davids, who during his time here, over the decades of being tax chair or minority lead, he's gone back and forth. He has always fiercely defended this prerogative. I'm sure he'll get up and tell you why this is an exception to that rule after I'm done speaking. So this provision has not been negotiated. There has not been any agreement with the Senate that they wouldn't pile it up with amendments. This is a vehicle for the Senate to unilaterally put together their own omnibus tax bill and shoot it back over at us, at which time we would not have an opportunity to offer any amendments, which is why we defend this prerogative. It would be violating decades, at least, of tradition in the House. And, we talked about the urgency. Perhaps occasionally we might want to negotiate bills when there are urgent and emergent needs. As Representative Anderson just talked about, we had this bill before the tax committee twice so far this year. Once was last week. It was voted down by the committee. And at that point, March 11th, you could have made an argument that if there was a way at that point to negotiate a bill, get ironclad agreement with the Senate, all four caucus leaders and the Gov sit down and iron out an agreement, that maybe you could have gotten it signed into law before the March 15th estimated quarterly tax deadline for businesses. But that now has passed. And so the urgency of putting ourselves and our own constitutional prerogative in the dustbin is no longer present. And so, we have a lot of important issues in front of the tax committee. There are some issues like this, which, 88% of these benefits go to people making over $500,000 a year. So this is one kind of topic that's on the table that will be negotiated along with other topics that represent other needs that we have in our state. Needs like property tax refunds, needs like, electricity and energy bills that are going ever higher. And so we will negotiate a tax bill, and I look forward to it. This isn't the only important issue in front of the tax committee this year. And so I just would urge members to vote no on this. Let the tax committee get back to its work. There is not urgency on this issue, and it's really, everybody knows, as we've had this discussion over several weeks, that there is not agreement. There has not been negotiation around this bill, and it's completely outside of the normal order of things in this body. So please vote no. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize a member from Fillmore, Representative Davids.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and thank you very much, Chair Gomez. I'm glad you were listening to me over the years. Those are comments, you were exactly right. I've said those things. Don't go to the floor with an individual tax bill because you'll have death by 1,000 cuts. There'll be amendment after amendment after amendment. But this bill, we don't have a negotiated agreement in the House. The Senate has their bill. And members, if the Senate's going to play games with us, and if they would take this bill and load it up, Chair Gomez, I'll be the first one to vote with you to knock that thing down. That's not what we're here for. We do have a sense of urgency here because this bill had to be passed by yesterday. We missed it. Now, I say we still have a sense of urgency because we have April 15th, and they'll be filing their individual tax returns, and it's going to be very hard for them to back up. What we have done to our 66,000 businesses in the state is unconscionable, and I would never want to correct Representative Anderson. I don't like going there. But let's say somebody gave a speech and they said it's worth $500 million. The Department of Revenue says it's worth $2.05 billion. Over 4 times that amount. It's a rounding error, I know. But members, the fiscal note, where is it here? The fiscal note is zero. It costs us nothing, and it makes Minnesotans put in their pockets $2.05 billion. Now, for me, that's not a lot. But for the 66,000 businesses, members, it is. This is a big deal. And yes, I do not take this lightly. We do have tradition in this House Tax Committee, and Chair Gomez is exactly right. And I don't like going away from that. But what I'm struggling with is, I've always said in those speeches, it wasn't mentioned in the quote here, but I've always said, unless there's an agreement. My question is this: why isn't there an agreement? 9-0 bipartisan in the Senate. The Senate did the right thing. I can't believe I said that. I'm going to strike that from the record. But they did. Why we're sitting on this, I really have no clue. I don't know. This bill, you talk about an urgency. The other bills we had, you could argue an urgency or not. This is an urgency. This is an urgency. Now, the governor's budget, I believe, comes out tomorrow, and I can't say what's in it, but the first thing I'm looking for is the pass-through entities. Does the governor support this? Let's do a little history lesson here. 2020 and 1. We had probably the second best tax chair ever, Paul Marquardt. He was really good. And Chair Marquardt at the time came and visited with me, a mere member of the minority, and gave me this bill. We put this bill in effect. It passed 2021. I had help from now Commissioner Marquardt,
help from the governor's office, because this is a really good deal. It was called the wraparound back then. To think we could do this and help our businesses at zero cost to the state, zero, and bring in this is now, Representative Anderson, I'm using 2024, $2.05 billion came into the state. Now, if the folk, my good friends on the other side of the aisle want to send that $2 billion to the federal government, I guess we just have to respectfully disagree. I want to keep that money here. I really, really do. 66,000 businesses. This is bipartisan, and yes, and Chair Gomez, I thank you for standing up for the integrity of the tax committee. I mean that very sincerely. But on something like this, my big question is, why isn't there an ironclad agreement? Why? Nobody can answer that for me, because this should have been done. It should have been done before March 15th when businesses file their taxes. Members, please vote green.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Robbins.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I rise in support of this urgency. It is an urgency. We heard testimony in committee twice now of how important this is to all of our businesses across the state. It's not a partisan issue, and it isn't a negotiating tool because there's no money involved. So we are not negotiating for anything because the cost to the state is zero. We are simply enabling our businesses to keep more of their own money instead of sending it to the federal government. That helps our communities, it helps our businesses. I have no idea why we would say this is a negotiating tool. This is something we all should agree on. We should all be trying to do for our businesses. It doesn't cost us a dime, and it helps them, and it keeps our communities strong. So please vote green.
I recognize the member from Clay, Representative Joy.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to support this also because when we talk about the businesses community and you talk about what we just heard, we had bills on this floor that they said passed bipartisan, 35 to 32 in the Senate, 35 to 32. That's bipartisan. This passed 9-0. We've had other bills on this floor, an OIG bill that passed 60 to 7. This here is a zero fiscal note. $0 is what it costs. They ask us to work across the aisle, try to get things done for Minnesota since we're a tied house. So we bring something that has zero fiscal note, but they want to hold a zero fiscal note to the end for negotiations and cause harm to small businesses. We heard a cannabis bill tonight that probably affects 1,800 businesses. Let's get this accelerated so it don't hurt small businesses. Yet here we are on a pass-through entity tax that's sending $2 billion to the federal government, which we heard a lot of opposition of the federal government tonight on the other side of the aisle. And yet we sit here and we don't even want to pay attention to this. Everybody's looking at their phones, reading their magazines, reading whatever they're doing over there. This is what's happening. This is zero fiscal note for you to press yes, move this through. The Senate will get it. They're going to put their amendments they're going to have. I understand the tax committee has always held the way they do things. They hold it to the end. But this is a bill here. We're not asking for $40 million like the emergency housing. This is very simple, a simple zero fiscal note. You know, when I met with Senator Rest on this, when we talked under her office, she got the new fiscal note because the first fiscal note said in 27 and 28, it had the words unknown. Now it has the number 0. So there is no changing. This is a 0. This is easy, members. I encourage this tonight. I know it's going to fail because it's failed in committee. They have failed it. They want to keep it for negotiations. Hopefully it's not a 1,400-page tax bill or what we're going to negotiate with the zero fiscal note. But I look forward to your guys' green vote. Thank you.
I recognize the member from Washington, Representative Anderson, PE.
Thank you. Not that I want to correct my tax chair, but the businesses pay $2 billion in Minnesota state taxes. That's the number that they're paying. These pass-through entities pay $2 billion. If we don't pass this, they will pay an additional $400 million to Donald Trump and the federals. That's what this is, folks. So Co-Chair Davids said that there is no deal. We don't have an ironclad deal, but that he is willing to say on the floor that he will absolutely not support any amendments on this bill or as it comes from the Senate. I want to tell members of the Tax Committee and members on the other side of the aisle and ask my fellow Republican members if I can see a show of hands of people that will also make that commitment. Will you make the commitment to have a clean bill? Representative Gomez, Chair Gomez, it's right here. We're all there. We will make a commitment that we will not either amend the bill, or if it comes back from the Senate with things on it, we won't support it. And there's your ironclad deal from this side of the aisle. Thank you.
I recognize the member from Anoka, the maker of the motion, Representative Niska.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker and members. This vote's real simple. This vote is real simple. Voting against this motion is a vote to harm Minnesota job creators for no good reason. Literally no good reason. There is no cost to the state of Minnesota for passing this bill. Representative Anderson, you said, I think, hopefully, that this is not a partisan issue, and it shouldn't be. But the people of Minnesota are going to see if it's a partisan issue or not. And I think what they're going to see is pure hostage taking by Minnesota Democrats of Minnesota small businesses and Minnesota job creators and Minnesota jobs. Pure hostage taking to negotiate something, to trade this for something. We heard some hints from Chair Gomez about the kinds of things that they want, that Minnesota Democrats are trying to hold Minnesota jobs hostage for no good reason, letting a deadline pass that harms Minnesota businesses and harms Minnesota jobs for no good reason other than political power. That's what this is all about. Chair Gomez, you're right, there's no agreement, but Chair Davids is right for the reason for that. There's no agreement because Minnesota Democrats won't agree in order to hold Minnesota jobs hostage for political power. That's why there's no agreement. And don't tell me that Democrats won't vote for no standalone tax bills. Chair Gomez, you just voted for one. House File 4378, your first motion for an urgency, a bill for an act related to taxation. Chair Gomez, 67 Democrats today voted for a standalone tax bill. So Minnesotans, there is no good reason to harm Minnesota businesses, to harm Minnesota taxpayers, like Minnesota Democrats are doing, except for political power. We should have an all-green board. We should pass this bill over to the Senate. If the Senate wants to play games, we're going to have 134 no votes to send that thing back. Members, Minnesotans are watching. Every Minnesota small business is watching. Everyone working for a Minnesota small business should be watching what you do today. Help Minnesota small businesses. It's a freebie. It's a literal freebie. But Minnesota Democrats are going to say no. Members, vote green.
Seeing no further discussion on the motion, the clerk will take the roll. The chief clerk will call the names of the members voting remotely.
Acom.
Go ahead.
Acom votes no.
Acom votes no. Baker.
Go ahead.
Baker votes aye.
Baker votes aye. Carroll.
Carroll, no.
Carroll votes no. Fogelman.
Fogelman votes aye.
Fogelman votes aye. Frederick.
Frederick votes no.
Frederick votes no. Gilman.
Gilman votes aye.
Gilman votes aye. Hicks.
Hicks votes no.
Hicks votes no. Jones.
Jones votes no.
Jones votes no. Keeler.
Keeler votes no.
Keeler votes no. Kosnick.
Cosmic aye.
Kosnick votes aye. Kresha.
Grisha, aye.
Kresha votes aye. Lee F.
Lee F, no.
Lee F votes no. Liebling.
Go ahead.
Liebling votes no.
Liebling votes no. McDonald.
McDonald votes yes.
McDonald votes aye. Purcell.
Purcell, no.
Purcell votes no. Quam.
You're up.
Aye.
Quam votes aye. Rarick.
Rarick votes aye.
Rarick votes aye. Ryer.
Ryer votes no.
Ryer votes no. Smith.
Smith votes no.
Smith votes no.
Members, please vote. The clerk will close the roll. There being 67 yeas and 66 nays, the motion does not prevail.